This implicit function given in example 6 is what we call a cardioid. It gives us this heart-shaped function, and it is an implicit function, so we want to differentiate this implicitly. And we're trying to find the slope at 1, 1, or that blue dot. And if we kind of look at that, it looks like maybe about, we're going to approximate a slope about -1 that goes to that point. So we're going to differentiate this. To differentiate this, what we want to do is differentiate the outside parts normally. Anytime we hit a y, we're going to differentiate using chain rule, apply y prime as a chain. So we're going to first start by differentiating the exponent 3 on the outside of the brackets. So we get 3x squared plus y squared. There's my y that I have to be worried about, minus 1 squared. So using the power rule, we get that. And then on the inside of that, we're going to multiply using the chain rule, 2x plus 2y. And because we've differentiated y, this is where we need to apply the chain rule to get y prime. And then the derivative of -1 is going to be 0. So there's the derivative of that first part. We differentiated the exponent 3, and then we applied chain rule to the inside. And then when we hit the derivative of y, we applied the y prime. The next part here is going to involve the product rule. So we're just going to apply the product rule. So derivative of the first term times the second term undifferentiated plus x squared. We differentiate the y, y cubed as 3y squared. And because there's that y there, we're going to then apply the chain rule, y prime. Okay, and that's equal to 0. So now that we've got all these pieces in, we want to then kind of sift out the y prime of this. So we're just going to make sure that we recognize where the right y prime parts are. There's a y prime here, and there's a y prime over here that we have to account for. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to maybe do is I'm just going to maybe expand this out, just multiply out the brackets here. So there's just these brackets here, and work this out. So I'm going to end up with 6x and then x squared plus y squared minus 1 squared plus, we're going to end up with 6y times y prime, and there's that y prime factor that I really want. Okay, and then I'm going to have my x squared plus y squared minus 1 squared term. I'm going to expand out these brackets, so I'm going to end up with 2xy cubed. Okay, not too interested in that. However, I am very interested in this term here. So 3x squared y squared times y prime. And that's going to be all equal to 0. Okay, so what we want to do is group some of these terms together. So I'm going to take this piece here and this piece here. They're going to go together. And the y prime terms are going to go together. So I'm just going to start with the y prime. So I'm going to factor that out. I'm going to end up with y prime. And I'm going to end up with 6y x squared plus y squared minus 1 squared. Okay, and then minus, I'm going to group together this term here. So these parts are all going to go together. Okay, so this becomes minus 3x squared y squared. Okay, so I factored out the y prime out of those terms and I've grouped them together. Now, in this step here, I'm going to move all the blue parts to the other side. So I'm going to end up with 2xy cubed minus 6x x squared plus y squared minus 1 all squared. Okay, so there I have all my y prime terms kind of one side. I factor out the y prime. This next step, I'm going to solve for y prime. So I get y prime is equal to 2xy cubed minus 6x times x squared plus y squared minus 1 squared. And in the denominator, we're going to end up with 6y x squared plus y squared minus 1 squared minus 3x squared y squared. Okay, so there's lots of terms in there, so we have to be, particularly careful with this. So what we want to do then is we want to calculate the slope. So we have the slope at x equals 1, y equals 1. Well, when we do this, we're just going to plug in 1 and 1 into this expression. So we get 2 times 1 cubed minus 6 times 1. And then when we add this together, I get 1 squared plus 1 squared minus 1 is 1. That's going to be all squared. So this simplifies quite nicely because of the 1s. So we end up in the denominator 6. That becomes 1 squared plus 1 squared minus 1, again, is 1. And that's all squared. Minus 3 times 1 squared times 1 squared. That just stays as 3. Okay, so as we simplify this further, this works out to be 2 minus 6, which is negative 4. The denominator is going to be 6 minus 3, which is 3. And if I take a look at that graph, it looks like the slope through that point is going to be a little bit steeper than negative 1. So it's going to be negative 4 over 3 that is tangent to that point.